Welcome to the News9 Plus show on the world's first news and current affairs OTT platform, News9 Plus. 32 years ago, a self-reliance committee headed by Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam drew up a roadmap for India to reduce defense imports from 70% to 30% by 2005. Now it's 2024 and we are still off target. With 11% of the total global arms imports, India has been the world's largest arms importer for close to 3 decades. But the good news is that for the first time, we are seeing the most concerted drive at indigenization. The government's Atmanirbhar Bharat drive aims not just to make India self-sufficient in defense requirements, but also turn us into a major defense exporter. Now, joining me to discuss this Arming Bharat strategy are Air Marshal Anil Chopra, DG of the Center for Air Power Studies, Mr. Ashok Atluri, CEO of Zen Technologies Limited, and my friend, Defense Analyst, Major Gaurav Arya. Gentlemen, welcome to the News9 Plus show. Air Marshal Chopra, I want to start by asking you this. We're going to see a lot of indigenous defense hardware on display at the 26th January parade tomorrow. What is the most significant step to your mind that the government has taken to make Atmanirbhar Bharat a success? And what is the one step that it needs to take to realize our dreams of making it a self-sufficient country in defense equipment?
I must mention that we have started this Make in India, Atmanirbhar Bharat actions only in the last 4 or 5 years with the utter seriousness that was required. You know, we are the largest importer, we are the 4th largest military, but the gap between us and China, which is the 3rd largest, is fairly huge. Now, as far as, in tomorrow's parade, we are going to have the Tejas flying for the first time in large formation of L shape. Are going to fly. We're also going to have C295. We are going to have the LH, the Rudra, and the LCH. All are flying. All these platforms, have been built in India or are being built in India. So there is a need. We, of course, will see the BrahMos, which we have been seeing for some years on display, the Pinaka, rocket launchers. But I must tell you that we still have some distance to go. There are some very, very niche technologies in LCA. Nearly 50% of the aircraft is still imported. The key components like the engine, radar, we took initially the Israeli help, but now we are building here. Air-to-air missiles, we have done fairly well, but in electronic warfare and some other avionics, we are still dependent with outsiders. We will never make ejection seats in India. So there are many areas in the LCA program itself that we have to keep our distance. Numbers built, we have only built 34. You remember 2001 was the first flight, 2015 the squadron got inducted, but numbers have to come up. Though now a 3rd line has been set up at Nasik, but still...
There's a long way to go, Air Marshal Chopra. There's a long road ahead, Gaurav. And the fact, Gaurav, that we're not seeing World War III yet, but the world is at war. And out of the multiple conflicts, 3 countries are actively involved in those. There's Russia, Israel, the United States. 3 of these countries are among our top 5 defense suppliers. How scary is that to you? And does this call for like an urgent requirement for Atmanirbhar Bharat, addition to what the government is doing now?
First of all, Sandeep, thank you for inviting me. I think you've hit the nail on the head. I think this is a cause of much concern and it should be treated like an emergency. Because one of the lessons that we have learned from the Russia-Ukraine war is this, that unless you have your own defense manufacturing base, unless you have your own, let us say your own supply chain, if I may put it that way, there is no way you're going to fight a war, because for a very long time, at least the teaching in the army was that future wars are going to be short, they're going to be brutal, they're going to finish in a matter of weeks, if not days, and then you're back home. And that is how most of our exercises are even today. On the 7th day, red land and blue land are shaking hands and you have chai, coffee and you're done. So, now what they have taught us, and also this conflict, Israel and Hamas, what it has taught us is that wars will stretch on and on. It's going to happen.
You can't decide the duration of a conflict.
You can't decide, absolutely. You can't decide the duration of the war. and people are going to let you down.
Yes.
For example, take the case of Ukraine.
Right.
Ukraine was flying high. Zelensky was, these many $1 billion from the European Union, these many billions of dollars from America, and these weapons, and suddenly it comes to a stop because maybe the Senate is not too happy, or Congress wants you to take a relook, or they're re-evaluating the strategy and they're saying it's a stalemate.
Yes.
They don't have anything to fight with.
Right.
And they think Zelensky has gone, on record to saying that we'll be massacred, we'll lose this war.
Absolutely.
So this is our biggest, I think this is an emergency, absolutely.
This is an
Nothing
emergency.
Short of it.
And Gaurav, an emergency, and you've mentioned two very important points. The Russia-Ukraine war, the fact that it's an emergency, and there's one aspect of that war, Gaurav, we've discussed this in the past, the rise of drone warfare, and it's come in such a scale that it's literally taken us all by surprise and indeed by shock. The kind of employment of drones in swarms, and literally they're talking of tens of thousands of drones being fielded by either side. And I want to bring in Ashok here because Ashok is literally at the center of this whole drone warfare business, and he makes these counter-drone systems. Ashok, welcome to the News9 Plus show. What is it that you think, this emergency that Gaurav is talking about, the Russia-Ukraine war has told us that you can't decide the duration of conflicts, and drones are going to be a very critical aspect of that. You're in the middle of this entire drone business, offensive drones and counter-drone systems. What is it that we need to do to prepare ourselves for this kind of drone warfare that the adversary might choose to inflict on us?
I think two things at the policy level that the government took very big, and I mean, it was we that proposed to Mr. Parikar for IDDM, Buy Indian IDDM should be there, which focus not on manufacturing but the design and development of the product. And when we first proposed much earlier than that, in fact, we have been talking about since 2003, 2004 IDDM. The remark we got from the industry, forget the government, was "Pehle chalna seekho, fir baad mein udne ki baat karna." And the fact was, we were saying, boss, we have filed 160 global patents for all, but they would never hear. Pehle make in India ki baat karenge, design ki nahi baat karenge. Fortunately, Parikar came and he caught it like this. Two things he caught from us. One was IDDM, second was Make 2, where the industry would fund the development. And actually, when I proposed this, he asked me, are you okay? Because everybody is saying 80-20, 100% for government funding. You are saying the opposite. But I said, listen, the innovation happens at the small and medium companies level, and they are not good at submitting reports which you want, but they're good at innovating and making products. So both got introduced. Thanks to that, when this Armenia-Azerbaijan war was the first time drones were used, and because of that, when the government started looking around, they saw that we were on the verge of making this counter drone. We started in 2018 developing, because in a drone we felt that it is going to be overcrowded. So we went and looked at the ecosystem. We said there was nobody working in anti-drone systems, and we started focusing, putting a lot of money in it. And fortunately, because of the IDDM policy that Mr. Parikar had proposed, the order went to Zen Technology. We were L1. There were a lot of Israeli companies, German companies. Their costs were out of whack, the prices they quoted. We got it. We delivered it. It was used. It was also used in G20 summit. So we have today a product in counter drone system that are absolutely world class. So so now we are trying to this. I think it's going to be very, very important. And the drones, we know that they come in now. They are not one or two drones coming, but they'll come in swarms.
Literally in
so
swarms,
the counter drone
hundreds
technologies
of them,
are being adapted, and they're being evolved very rapidly to the changing requirement, which is required. If you don't own the IP, you have the supply chain, you have the manufacturing, but nothing is happening. You're working for a threat that was yesterday. But here you have to evolve on a daily basis, which design and development ownership helps us in achieving. Sandeep, over to you.
Marshal Chopra, this point that Gaurav made, and the fact that you can't depend on external supplies anymore, and we're literally at a crisis point now. It's an emergency. What is it that you think we need to do to take this forward, to make it, a crisis management of sorts, if you can put it that way, to ensure that we become defense reliant, at least in very key areas in the next 5 years?
Yeah, Sandeep, I must mention that today 60% of the armed forces of Russian origin, and nearly 10% of Indian Air forces of Israeli, origin. So there are issues. Whenever a war starts anywhere, we know that Russian supplies have slowed down a little. Even Israeli supplies will be affected because the war is continuing, unending. So there are issues that we need to. There are some critical technologies which the government of India has already, flagged. And I'm not talking of the new technologies. I'm not talking of AI, cyber, electronic warfare, but certainly, an aero engine, for example. There are. If we want to put the global high table, we have to sort of getting an aero engine. Now, whether we join up with joint venture with a foreign engine manufacturer, because there are only 5 major foreign engine manufacturers in the world.
Right.
So we have huge orders. We've got a huge armed forces order. There's a huge order with the civil. We have ordered close
civil
to
aviation, yes.
new airliners. So these engine manufacturers must come and set up shop over here.
Yes.
As far as, I must also mention that the wars in the past in Iraq or in Afghanistan and now in Hamas, Israel is uncontested environment. Of course, in Ukraine, because the NATO has joined up with them, it's become a contest.
Yes.
So if a war in a contested environment is carrying on for 2 years, you can understand that how much of supply chain we require, the amount of ammunition, the munitions that you will require, the drones. And on drones, one point I want to just add that we are in with Drone Federation of India. We know there are more than 100 startups. We know what are they doing.
Right.
Still, there are a large number of critical components in drones which we must make in India. We are importing them. We are assembling drones. The drones are already being sought by the armed forces.
Right.
So there is a need in drones to start manufacturing the components of the battery, the power pack, the sensors, the rotors, etc.
Right.
So there is a lot of action that needs to develop here also, yes.
Absolutely. Very important points there, Gaurav. As Marshal Chopra mentioned, the drones, we really need to be self-sufficient in drone technology. There are many key components that are still imported. But now we come to the elephant in the room, Gaurav. And this is a topic that you've been talking about passionately. It's a DRDO, restructuring, reforming the DRDO. And we are being told that a Government of India appointed committee, the Vijay Raghavan committee, has submitted its recommendations to the government, where they've suggested sweeping changes across the DRDO, restructuring it, creating a DTC, Defense Technology Commission, under the Prime Minister's office. Do you believe that this is the road to change, or is it going to be just like one of those other committees that just came by and gave its recommendations, nobody implemented it? We all know what's to be done, it's never done. Do you think this is going to change now?
There's an old joke, Sandeep, that a camel is a horse made by a committee. So essentially, whether it is the Abdul Kalam committee or whether it's, there are so many committees.
Right.
You're in the same kind of geopolitics, foreign affairs and national security business that I am in terms of reading, in terms of analyzing. And unless it is implemented, these sweeping changes and one or two things that they have said, which a lot of us have been saying for a long time, get out of production.
Right, absolutely.
Get into hardcore R&D.
Yeah.
You guys are R&D specialists.
Yeah.
Do that. Also, the age profile of scientists was one pointer.
Yes.
They said that, the age profile is very old. So go and tap into young scientists,
lateral entrance,
lateral entries.
Get into universities
and I think one other thing is that, I was speaking to these Israeli people and they said one thing which I found very interesting. They said that you don't know where the corporate starts and the Israeli armed forces, the IDF
they're
finishes.
They're also integrated.
They're so integrated, and that is where it comes from, actually.
Right.
That is where here. If the government let go, it would be a major boon, right?
Right.
Please, for heaven's sake, let go.
Right.
Let go. And let the private industry take over. In America, they're making the aircraft carriers are made by private partners.
Oh, yes. That's a military-industrial complex.
That's a military-industrial complex, and this is exactly what you need.
Right.
There are people in the private sector. I was talking to somebody.
Right.
I'll not mention the name of the company. You manufacture rifles.
Yes.
And this was 4 or 5 years back, so much would have changed. But the fact is that where do you get the ammunition to test it, and then you're dependent upon somebody for the firing range, and then you go. These are small little things. You're manufacturing a grenade. You're dependent upon a government agency
for
testing. For testing. It should be there within your compound. You do what you wish, come out.
Right.
You see, and the government can say that, hey, the 3 of you work on a patent, or I beg your pardon, 3 of you work on a product, and if we like the product, we'll fund it.
Right.
So that's how it happens everywhere. And they even fund R&D.
Yes.
Here the problem is, I think the government needs to let go.
Right. The government needs to let go. In fact, and Gaurav, there are very bright examples of how government agencies function. Like DARPA is one classic example. We keep talking about it. So it works in such a a very small footprint. There are just a couple of dozen people who run the whole show. They're just basically program management. They're developing technology in concert with industry. But Ashok, I want to ask you this. This is a oft-reported, discussed example, DARPA versus DRDO. Why is DRDO designing assault rifles, whereas it should be looking at cutting-edge technologies like counter-drone systems and all that? What do you think of this new report that's been submitted to the government, or the Vijay Raghavan committee report? What is it that you would see the DRDO do that will actually enable the private industry to step up and, in the years ahead, create that military-industrial complex?
I think, if you look at even, we're talking about America, we look at the rocket program that they had. For 40 years, they were not doing anything. Only, and who were doing all the rocket research, with NASA? The two companies, Boeing and Lockheed Martin. Do you know what are the strength of the rocket programs? The number of people who were employed in that, 50,000 people.
Right.
And they were not, what was the thing they were working on? Cost plus model. And would they wanted this project to ever finish? No, they would not want to finish.
Right.
This is exactly what Elon Musk, you must read Elon Musk by Walter Isaacson. In that they say, Elon Musk went and said, listen, pay me if my rocket flies, otherwise don't pay me.
Yes.
And that was the thing. That's similar to our make, the surprise that, I didn't even know that they did that.
Right.
And, Elon Musk was able to fly the rockets with 500 employees.
Right.
100 the strength of that, 1% of the strength. Now the whole thing is, one thing is, I think DRDO has done a tremendous job.
Yeah.
And they're extremely bright people. The Pareto may be 595, not the 2080, but they are extremely bright people. We should ensure that this accumulated wisdom that is within DRDO is not lost in our let go kind of thing.
Yes.
We should retain the talent, maybe, but it should be finally the private company that should say, if I develop this, give me the money. Otherwise, you don't have to pay, like Make 2. I think all the projects will go online. Maybe very large project somewhere, you need a program management team. But, again, the program management is not I'm the Lord of the Rings kind of a guys. These guys should be facilitating guys. The people who are willing to help, and they should feel that, listen, I have to help private companies to achieve this.
Right.
They should not be saying that DGPA wala hai, you're not qualifying and all that. You can make life very difficult also.
Right.
But if they're really, really cooperative, I think we are on a cusp of absolutely becoming in the world's absolute, I think it will be in the top 3 without any doubt if this is implemented.
Absolutely. That's a sentiment that's been echoed often, Marshal Chopra, that we could be the arsenal to the world, given our competitive edge in manufacturing. But what is it that you see the DRDO, based on this report? What structure do you envisage for the DRDO in the years ahead? Should it just focus on those core critical technologies, strategic systems, for instance, and get out of all the run-of-the-mill things which the private sector can do beautifully well, much better than any government organization? What's your view on this?
Sandeep, there was a DRDO committee called Ramarao Committee 2008.
Yes, 10 years back, 15 years.
Yes. And, I must tell you, even if half of it had been implemented, you wouldn't have had to have another DRDO committee set up.
Right.
But unfortunately, not much happened. It gathered dust. And we sincerely hope that the new committee report, I have been interacting with the people who have been on the committee, and we have a good idea. They've given some great recommendations. Surely, we have to, the number of labs the DRDO currently has, the areas they are into, they have to cut down. Why should they be getting into flying clothing? Why should they be getting into so many other areas? So some 4 or 5 groups of areas that DRDO must look at. As far as what Gaurav was saying, the DARPA and the American labs, I must tell you that Army, Navy, Air Force in US have got their own labs, so that they are the ones who are interfacing all the time between the DRDO, the research people, the NASA, and with the DARPA, and they know what their user requirements. I think this is one area which needs to be pushed. I'm very happy that all the 3 services in the last 2 years have set up design coordination cells within their headquarters, and therefore, that's something going to be good. We have something to learn also from the way the Navy has been handling, production right independence. Indian Navy managed their own designs cells. There is a naval officer sitting in every factory. In fact, they are driving the indigenization. A similar thing was attempted by the Air Force by setting up a PMT in ADA. I'm not sure how much that succeeded, because both HAL and ADA are unwilling to sort of let go their own corporate system. But certainly there is a need for much data. My next point I want to mention is there has to be some task force approach on some projects. As I said, Aero Engine is done. We have done exceedingly well in missiles because it's a task force. We had a good joint venture in BrahMos. So there are success stories which we need to learn from and harness our strengths. I agree that there are, and DRDO, for example, in engine, we have worked on an engine for 40 years. There's a great amount of data available. There are experts available. Only thing is we have to see now how we put this information to a joint venture or with a private company.
Absolutely. Gaurav, as Air Marshal mentioned, that there was a Rama Rao committee report before that, 15 years back, which submitted its findings, and now we have another report. And General Bipin Rawat once told me this, that everything that we need to know is already there in some committee report or the other. It's only implementation that I'm doing, and that's the one thing that needs to be done. But going ahead, Gaurav, how critical is the restructuring of the DRDO to reimagine the way we are going about defense indigenization?
No, I think it's extremely critical. They disbanded the Ordnance Factory Board, and they, there are 7 companies, etc. I happened to have dinner with these few youngsters before it was disbanded, and this was in Avadi, in Tamil Nadu, where they're making tanks and all that. So, very bright, very motivated youngsters, extremely bright, but disillusioned. That is what happens when you take top-of-the-shelf professionals and tie them and lock them up in a box. So I think DRDO again, wonderful. I've had interactions with many DRDO scientists. I think they're top-of-the-line people. However, I think they need to be unshackled. You see, they need to be unshackled, and there should be structural changes. Make it a flatter organization. Make it an organization of scientists, for scientists, by scientists.
Very good point there, Gaurav. In fact, we can't but acknowledge the fact that the DRDO has made us self-sufficient in strategic systems. When it comes to that environment where nobody will give you the technology, the DRDO has done fantastically well. But in other areas, we've discussed this, assault rifles and all, they shouldn't actually be there in the first place. But that brings me to the next segment of our discussion, that there are gaps in our defense capabilities, and India turns to the West for technology. And for decades, France has been India's go-to country for defense imports. Now, French President Emmanuel Macron is the chief guest at the Republic Day parade. And no other country has been given this honor as many times as France has been. And the answer is not surprising, because from submarines to fighter jets and, more importantly, engine technology, France is India's strategic partner. It's endorsed our right to test nuclear weapons in '98 and has wholeheartedly backed our claim for a permanent UNSC seat. Now, Air Marshal Chopra happens to be one of our batch of first French-trained pilots. He brought the Mirage 2000 squadron many years ago. The Mirage 2000, I must tell you, is an outstanding aircraft. It will be in service. It entered service when I was in school, Air Marshal Chopra, I must mention this, and it will continue flying long after I've retired from journalism, I guess. But this thing is, why is France so critical to India as a strategic partner?
Sandeep, I must tell you that our connection with the French primarily has been on 3 areas. One is, of course, aviation, which has been the main connect, then the Scorpion submarines and nuclear, and some little bit in space. These are the 4 areas in which we have worked with them. And I must tell you, we got the first French fighter aircraft in 1950s, not one, 2 of them. The Oregon, which was called Tufani, and then we got Mystère. Both these aircraft did extremely well. Then the French, Anglo-French Jaguar came, which is the DPSA, and then of course Mirage 2000, which has been the platform of choice, whether it was in Kargil, whether it's in Balakot, and now of course the Rafale. So we have had, and of course in between the helicopters, the Elwed, the Chetak Cheetah fleet, the entire, it all, and the engines. The ALH engine is a turbomeca engine and subsequently the Shakti engine which came out. So we have worked very, very closely with French. And the good part is no arm twisting. You know, they are willing to give you the best technology. They're offering you exactly what they're offering to the French effort. So there is no arm twisting. But, you know, transfer of technology is an issue not only for French, but whether it was with Russians having ahead of a big 21 upgrade project in Russia, whether it's the Americans, whether they will give us sufficient technology in F414, or it'll just be production drawing, you cut and paste and you make the engine, is the bigger issue. But undoubtedly, French are the best Western friends that we have had when it comes to the military supplies, and this connection is very, very.
The French are the best Western partner. But Ashok, before we wind up this segment, I want to ask you, what is it that France can actually teach us about self-sufficiency in defense equipment? They were the fourth country to go completely indigenous, you know, as far as defense equipment came. What would you learn from the French?
You know, I think the amount of support the government gives to the industry is fantastic. They actually will work like salesmen for the French defense industry. And they're pushing that their 1-point agenda, we are salesmen for the defense industry. I think that is actually coming in India as of now. I feel when we go to embassies or the defense attaches, they're actually finding out what are the systems we have. They're trying to see that if that kind of, you know, unfettered support is given by a government to any industry, that industry will flourish. And that's happening in India at this point.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Ashok, Air Marshal Chopra, and my friend Gaurav Arya. Very important insights there for Atmanirbhar Bharat and for Arming Bharat. We can only hope that we implement all of these reports that we've been talking about in the last couple of months. And of course, there is a clear-cut vision for making India self-sufficient in defense equipment and indeed an exporter. That's a story we'll be tracking. But thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining me today to talk about Arming Bharat. For decades, it was said India was arming without aiming. But now things have changed. The new government policies clearly indicate a sense of purpose, direction, and urgency. We leave you with this story, the series, Arming and Aiming, on the government's drive to make us self-sufficient in defense equipment. Do watch.
Adding firepower on land. Conquering the skies. Ruling the high seas. India is doing it all.
We are exporting platforms, we are exporting subsystems, components, depending on which country and what they need.
You are firstly cutting down on imports and then you are increasing your exports. So one is you've conserved foreign exchange and then you've added on to the foreign exchange.
We can tweak the product, we can modify the product, we can modernize the product, we can export the product because everything is with us.
Gulmarg in the Kashmir Valley usually has 10 feet of snow. But this year it saw a brown winter. And that's not all. Weather officials tell us there has been a 99 to 100% deficit in snow and rainfall in the Himalayas in December and January. Now, joining me to discuss this very alarming sequence of events is environmentalist Chandrabhushan and my colleague Nivriti Mohan, who's put together the story on no snow. Mr. Chandrabhushan, welcome to the News9 Plus show. Very alarming developments in the last couple of days. We've been seeing unimaginable pictures of brown Himalayas. Tell us why we should worry about the dry Himalayas and how do they impact us here on the plains?
Thank you, Sandeep. You know, I have been tracking this for a couple of weeks now. And, you know, if you look at the past 10 years, you will see that the snowfall in upper reaches of Himalayas used to start somewhere in November.
Yes.
Then it became December, and now we are at the end of Jan and there is no rainfall and snowfall.
Right.
And this has huge implications for both the economy because Himalayan economy depends a lot on winter rains and snowfall, water security, and as well as, the livelihoods of people. So this is not a good news. In fact, all the Himalayan states,
Right.
From Kashmir to Himachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand, have not received enough rainfall.
Right.
And on top of it, you now have forest fire. In fact,
Yes.
I just looked at Forest Survey of India data, which shows that in last couple of months, there have been about 2,500 incidents of forest fires,
Right.
which is 7 to 10 times more than the normal.
Yes.
So there is something really wrong happening right now as far as Himalayas are concerned.
Right. And Nivriti, you did this story on no snow, right? Tracking this. What did the IMD officials tell you, and why is it so scary?
See, IMD officials, when I spoke to the DGA IMD a few days back, he was clearly telling me that the temperatures in the Himalayan region and the Himalayan states, the temperature is rising 1 degree in 100 years.
Right.
And in rest of the country, it is rising at the rate of 0.63 degrees in a year. So he is clearly saying that the impact of climate change and the weather patterns, that is western disturbance and El Nino combined together, they are making it worst for the Himalayan region and the coastal areas especially. And in Himalayas, he was saying that temperature is rising at a rate more than the rate
than it is on the plains. What does, Mr. Chandrabhushan, what does this mean for us now? I mean, 2023 is the hottest year on record. What does it mean for 2024? Is it going to again be more of the same, or break all previous records, or what's the road ahead? Give us the forecast.
So 2024 is also a strong El Nino year, which started somewhere in July this year, but it didn't affect our monsoon, summer monsoon.
Yeah.
And I think the effect of El Nino is there on winter monsoon. As Nivitri said, that there is also a lack of western disturbance. Himalayas get a lot of moisture from Mediterranean, which has not come this year.
Yes.
So there's a strong El Nino. Global warming obviously is there. So you have El Nino and you have climate change. Both of them are, acting together. So I am expecting few things in couple of months. One, that we'll have early heat wave. So we are going through a short and intense winter right now in the plains. Whereas Himalayas have not received that kind of snowfall so far. So you have a short winter, a sharp winter for northern plains. You are then going to have heat waves, which actually last year also started somewhere in February. So you will have heat wave. It will have implications on our Rabi crop. Wheat is likely to get affected this year as well. And with El Nino, maybe 2024 will break the record of 2023 as the warmest year on record.
Thank you, Mr. Chandrabhushan, for sharing your insights with us on how the Himalayas affects us all. We leave you with the story No Snow by Nivriti Mohan on why the Himalayas should concern us all. Thank you for watching.
So far in the month of January, there has been no such precipitation in the Himalayan states.
You come to Simla, it's very warm. I mean, in Delhi, you're interviewing me, I feel like really colder than what I experience in Simla.
The Himalayan region is warming rapidly. In fact, they are warming at a higher rate than plains.